You know, why, this is a floating fishing pier, not a real expensive thing. Why couldn't this be somewhere on the lake in a public facility? Again, this is going to bring people downtown along with a park or some kind of facility like that. Pedestrian walk, of course, this probably is one of the Great Lakes or maybe even an ocean. I'm not sure exactly where that's at. But, you know, again, there's in Whitmore Lake, there's certainly a lack of access to the water. Something like this, maybe not something that wide or large, but why don't we have access to it? There are some, this certainly is an all-inclusive list of funding, but there are some MDOT funds available. State recreation grants are a big part of the puzzle here. Seek support funding from the county. We just received some of that in the Barker sidewalk. There are occasions when we can become demonstration projects within the county. There's Connecting Communities, National Association of Parks. I mean, there are a number of programs out there that we can leverage funds we have. And I mentioned I work with Kiwanis, work with the service organizations. There are a number of mechanisms, again, not an all-inclusive list, but part of becoming a destination is becoming a destination. Kind of how we get there. Well, I've talked enough. Now it's your turn if you'd like, and what I'd like to do maybe is we can end it there, or if you want to talk priorities, maybe put that on a future agenda, or however you want to do it. But I think I've talked a lot, and at this point, either at this meeting or in a future meeting, I think we're going to have to talk some priorities. And I think what we need to know as a planning commission, I'm pretty sure most of the planning commissioners are on board with at least starting this idea of form-based code in the downtown. And before we really get going on this, we wanted to get the board's thoughts on going forward with that. So if nothing else happens tonight, maybe we can get some discussion on if this is something we should go forward with.
I'm all for it.
I'm all for it. It's something that definitely would help welcome new development, and as Earl said, it really excites developers to have a form-based code, gives them a lot more variations to what they could do. So I definitely am for it.
I'm against changing anybody's zoning without their.
Okay.
Sam said, well, it's better for people as well. These people pay a lot of taxes. They had this property for a long time. And that's the way I feel about it.
I like the idea. I have a hard time at this point envisioning how that's going to fit into what the constrictions are that we have, the way that Main Street runs at this particular point in time, the width, how some of these things are going to actually fit into what we have to work with. So I mean, I like the idea. I'm just not really sure how it could work. And I'll give you an example. It's like last year I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and that's a city that's started in the 1600s. Some of the roads that I walked down were originally made in the 1600s. They have a lot of the form-based codes that we were just talking about. That's how pretty much that whole city is developed. They have constrictions that they have to work with. I mean, you walk down the streets and their sidewalks are this wide. But that's what they had to work with. And they've made it work in their community. But it's a large community. I mean, we don't have that at this particular point in time. So the issues that I would end up having is setting this in motion. How do we make it work?
Well, it's going to be dusted.
Right.
To figure that out.
I'd like to hear from each of the planning commissioners. Some of you, this may be your first exposure to some of this downhill fishing. Other planning commissioners have been involved in the process. And I'd like to get your thoughts and know what you have to think about.
Before we get somebody hasn't spoken yet either. I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
I think it's great.
Okay.
I mean, I hadn't either. I'll read it.
But also, Wayne, too, one of the things you said, first off, get rid of half those ordinances. Well, form-based code would do just that, Wayne.
Well, we've been doing something wrong, so whatever.
But I mean, that would do that. It would get rid of half of those ordinances that are kind of holding up us, you know, giving people options in larger government. Form-based code would do exactly that. So you have to think about what you say when you say that, because here it is a way to accomplish that, and yet, you know, you're not for it yet either, so.
Ms. Wilson, did you have anything else to add? John, would you like to get started? Mr. Mayor?
Sure. I look at some of the spaces that we've identified in this process, and first of all, I'm in favor of form-based code, and my limited exposure to it is all of 3 months now. So I'm as a newbie, as one of the newbies at the table. But to Mr. Dockett's concerns, by way of example, the North Village property is currently zoned at whatever here. We would be making it, I think if I understand it properly, a form-based code would be not a lesser code, but a less restrictive code in that process. So if someone wanted to develop it to the old zoning code, i.e. a planned, build a shopping center, they're more than welcome to do that in that situation. This just gives them more options. So we're not taking something from a property owner in that situation. And we would absolutely involve the owner's input. I think we have a legal obligation to involve to post and to take comment, and you just can't do this in the dark of night in this process. There would be a discussion, a public forum of some sort in that process. I don't not like we're taking anyone's property or kicking anybody, pushing anybody to the curb or anything of that nature. It just allows us to, as the community continues to evolve, to focus that evolution, if you will.
The reason I say that is because my zoning has been changed. I've been here since 1970. My zoning's been changed twice at least, without my knowledge. So.
Okay, I stand corrected then. Again, I'm the newbie at the table.
I think I'm zoned office residential right now. How that happened, I don't know. No one notified me.
Okay.
I was commercial when I went there.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Mayor?
No, thank you.
Mr. Eagle?
And I'm all for the form-based, also getting rid of restrictions, it's just so much better to do. But I'm in the same boat he is, thinking about, it all looks great, but we're so limited on what we can do there. Without forcing somebody out to make these changes, I don't know how you're going to do that, or how long you have to wait for succession or something to happen to get some of these things in place. I just have a hard time seeing that, I guess.
I'm also in favor of it. As in everything else, change is hard to do. I think there's always going to be details that'll have to be worked out. And it's usually at the boundaries of some zoning to the next. But the overall concept is probably the best workable with what the existing downtown is right now. And I think it would be a positive way to go for the community.
I've been excited about the form-based code since I learned about it and how it functions. I really don't think that it gives limits to people that have businesses down there. It actually opens up more options to them to improve their situation. And considering the infrastructure we already have in place there and the area involved, I think that's probably the best way to go. And I can't think of another way that would make happen what we want to happen down there.
One, I'm obviously echoing everybody else by saying that I'm certainly excited about trying to put together a form-based code. I think it's really the only way that we arrive at a workable downtown. What we've got in place now, from an ordinance perspective, is cumbersome and it's confusing and it's contradictory in spots and it's really difficult to work with, and it doesn't address really, it doesn't even come close to laying out a blueprint for a workable downtown. And by focusing on, really on appearance, much more so than uses, I think that's the only way that we create or let a downtown kind of evolve into what we're not gonna, we're at the table, we're not gonna go sledgehammer anybody's home, we're not gonna go immediately say, you know, you've all gotta leave and we're gonna wipe every structure away and we're gonna start with a new tabletop. That doesn't happen. But what can happen is if we focus on what we want it to look like, then when demand comes and when people do want to build, we're not stuck with just accepting what they want. We've got the ability to have some selectivity and to have some hey, this is really what we want the downtown to look like. And it's critical.
This is gonna take time. I mean, it could be decades to, but we gotta start somewhere, sometime. And, you know, I think imparting a vision, people can buy in and think, gosh, you know, this little house sitting on the lake, wow, that could be the cutest B&B, you know, we don't even allow that, you know, and then that turns out to be a successful business. Maybe somebody a couple houses down, wow, you know, in my retirement years, I would like to do that for, you know, to make a little extra money for my husband and I, you know, we'll just convert a couple of the bedrooms, you know, to a B&B or something. You know, it could be quite an amenity. If we get the bike trails coming in from elsewhere, I think we're talking about some of that later, you know, it could be a stopping place on the way from, you know, Port Huron to you know, Saugatuck or whatever, wherever those bike trails go. You know, it could be a real positive thing to bring people into Whitmore Lake. So we've got to start somewhere, imparting a vision, and people will just, you know, I think they're going to latch on to it, especially with the kind of, you know, kind of lake we have and the community. I'm excited about this. Kind of in wrapping, I take after the last couple speakers. All of us sitting here at the table really are our current city fathers. Those on the planning commission, board, and a horizon, an outlook for people in this position is 50 and 100 years. You know, what are you leaving? What is the legacy behind your children and grandchildren, and so forth? And while we might not be able to see every application and all the pictures that we've seen and how does that apply to our downtown because of space constraints or whatever, I think we look at this and say, again, it begins now, it begins with this vision, and if we have one, what we want to happen will eventually happen. If we don't start with some kind of a vision or a plan, then it basically just evolves on its own, which is not good city planning and good design. So I'm very much supportive of all the different initiatives that we've seen outlined here tonight, particularly the form-based code. I would be for rezoning existing parts of downtown, particularly in the residential areas, allowing them to be commercial. As Mr. Towns pointed out, doesn't mean anybody would be required to vacate their house, wouldn't change their tax structure, how much they pay, and things like that. What it would do is enhance their property value. When they went to sell, they now have more options. And this, a first step in this is to let this become commercial and let this thing evolve, but have a frame of reference in mind. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you so very much for your time tonight and the presentation and really making the concise, putting together the planning fairs we had and the plans on the vision sessions for downtown, calling comments out of the survey, and doing this presentation. Actually, the next couple items on our agenda, the PDA with their